So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to the Planning Committee meeting here at Lichfield District Council, here in this council chamber on the 9th of January 2023. And may I welcome you all, as this is the first meeting of this new year. Before I start, I just need to make sure that everyone understands they must speak clearly into the microphone for reasons which have already been enunciated. Our legal officer is joining us via a Zoom meeting, the Zoom platform, or is it Teams possibly? And so it's only a virtual platform that we're using for our legal services this evening due to unforeseen circumstances. So you must speak very clearly and enunciate your words as clearly as possible into the microphone, please. I'd also like to welcome back Councillor Latham, who is here this evening and has joined us after a 2-year break. Very nice to see you, Councillor Latham, this evening.
Yeah.
So we now move on to the agenda, and the first item on your agenda is apologies for absence. And I've had apologies transmitted to me from Councillor Cross, Derek Cross, and also I have a feeling that Councillor Powell might be running late. So my assumption is that Councillor Powell will be joining us, but he's not present at this moment. Members, item 2 on your agenda is declarations of interest. Could I please have anyone show if they have such an interest? Thank you. Councillor Salter.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Chair. I need to declare an interest as Chairman of the Shenstone Parish Council, who have raised strong objection to a particular application, that one being item 22/01533 FUH, 9 Bowden Close. And so I will withdraw.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Councillor Salter. Any other declarations of interest? Councillor Ray, please.
Not so much declaration of interest, but just an interest of transparency. There's an application 96 Gare Lane. Before the last application was withdrawn, I did have contact with the owners of number 94, but I'm not predetermined in that decisions to be made this evening.
Thank you very much indeed. So as you say, just in the course of transparency. Thank you. Any other declarations of interest, members, please? Thank you. We now move on to the minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on December the 5th, 2022. That's 5 weeks ago. Members, you've had a copy of those sent to you electronically. It forms part of this report, this planning report in front of you. Do I have your permission to sign those as a true and correct record of the meeting which took place on the 5th of December 2022? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's done. We now move on to the main point of this evening's meeting, which is the planning applications. Members, I just need to draw your attention to the supplementary papers, which you should have in front of you. If you haven't got them in front of you, sorry, they've been sent to you electronically. So there are supplementary papers. I hope you've had a chance to read those, because there is information there which, of course, needs to be taken into account. So we now move on to the very first of the applications, of which we have 4 this evening. And this is 22/00476/COU, and it concerns Priory Farm at Blythbury. I'm going to ask the planning officer, Kerry Challoner, to go through this report, members. So if you'd please cast your eyes forward and look at the screen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. First application that we're looking at tonight, as Councillor Marshall's just set out, is Priory Farm, which is page 7 onwards of your report. The application is for the change of use in an existing agricultural building to a 4-bed dwelling house. It's a conversion scheme, not a new build. And the building is located in the Priory Farm complex. If we just as shown on the location plan, this is a Priory Farm complex, and it's accessed via Nun Lane down the track. There's a number of barn conversions that were granted permission in 2019. I think there's 4 of them which are underway, and there's also the grade 2 listed building which is around here on the screen. It's just an aerial view showing its rural location. Draw your attention to the supplementary because reference was made in the report to the site being within the West Midlands Greenbelt, and it's just to clarify that the site is not within the West Midlands Greenbelt. The River Bly runs just down here as well. The site is within, well, part of the site, sorry, is within flood zone 3, which is the highest risk area, and that's shown by the dark blue there. That's the red square outlines the building, just to make you aware that the flood zones. And there's also flood zone 2, which is shown as light blue. That's medium risk, but the majority of the site and the majority of the building is within flood zone 1. Just look at the photographs of the site. So this is the existing building which would be converted. I'll come to the plans in a couple of slides. This area here on the side of the building would also be enclosed to form part of the conversion. In the background there, you can see the barns that are under conversion under the 2019 scheme, which was for 4 dwellings. These buildings also sit between the site and the listed buildings, so there's no sort of interrelationship there. This slide just shows the layout of the site, so the building will obviously stay where it is. There's a river along the back. The majority of the site will be garden area, and there's a small area for parking shown at the front. Slide just shows the existing building as we've just seen on the photographs. And then this slide goes to the proposed floor plan. So you basically have a kitchen, open plan living area, and then there's four bedrooms there with ensuite bathrooms. Slide shows the exterior of the building, which will be reclad and some glazing elements popped in. And there is a condition for materials to make sure that we have really high quality materials. And that concludes the presentation. In terms of the reason why it's reported to planning committee, that's because we have an objection from the highway authority. That's set out at the start of the report. They raise objections to the unsustainable location, the increased use of a car, and there being no pedestrian routes, which would create a highway danger. This is dealt with in section 4.4 of the report. The objections basically relate to highway and access, and that is fair enough from the highway authority, but as planning officers, we have to look at the whole picture and not just the highway impacts of the proposal, and that's dealt with all there in section 4.4. So the recommendation is to approve, subject to the conditions. I think there's 15 conditions there, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much there to Kerry Challoner. Just before I ask our first speaker this evening, which is Charlotte El Hakiem of CT Planning, I failed to mention the name of the legal officer who is joining us via Teams, as I mentioned earlier, and I do apologise for that oversight, but our legal officer this evening is Piers Riley Smith, and Piers Riley Smith is a barrister at King's Chambers, and he's joining us, as I say, virtually via a Teams meeting with our principal planner here, Claire Billings. So first speaker, please, Charlotte El Hakiem, principal planner with CT Planning. If you'd like to speak, you probably know the protocol. It's 5 minutes, and with 30 seconds still remaining, if you are still speaking, you will be notified that you only have that 1/2 minute to go. Thank you very much, and your time will start as soon as you begin to talk. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity for me to speak to the committee this evening. As members have heard from the officer and what I've read in the detailed committee report, the Planning Authority recognised that the application is acceptable in principle through national and local policy, and there are no technical reasons why the proposal cannot be delivered. The reason we are here this evening is to discuss the application and the objection from Staffordshire County Council of Highways. They objected to the proposal not on the grounds of concerns over highway safety or the efficient use of the highway. They've objected as a matter of principle on sustainability grounds. I would like to clarify the first paragraph of the officer's report, which states that the application has been reported to committee due to significant planning objections. This comment is thought to be referring to a significant number of similar applications for conversions that we as professionals are noticing at the moment, rejected by the Highway Authority, rather than significant concerns. The officer may want to clarify this. The thrust of national and local policies to improve sustainable development. Paragraph 8 of the NPPF promotes three overarching objectives to sustainability, which are independent of one another. There is an economic objective that seeks to build a strong, responsive and competitive economy by ensuring that sufficient land of the right types is available. The social objective, which supports strong, vibrant and healthy communities that seeks to ensure the sufficient number and range of homes can be provided. And the environmental objective to protect and enhance our natural built environment by making efficient use of land, minimising waste and moving to a low carbon economy. The Highway Authority should look across all arms of sustainability and cannot simply conclude a site is unsustainable because the majority of journeys would need to be by motor vehicles. As the officer mentions, this is a view that the Planning Authority needs to take themselves. This is an isolated view by the Highway Authority and doesn't concur with the thrust of planning policy supporting the conversion of buildings within the countryside. There are other aspects of sustainability to consider, and members must weigh such matters against the other considerations that weigh in favour of the application. The first consideration is that both national and local policy support the reuse and adaptation of rural buildings. These, by definition, are found in relatively isolated locations in the countryside, in which it is unusual to find roads that have pavements on, or indeed streetlights. To insist that conversions of rural buildings should only be allowed in circumstances where these exist would affect and negate the policy. In addition, the above paragraph 111 of the NPPF states that development should only be prevented or refused on highway grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety or the residual cumulative impacts of the road network would be severe. In this case, the proposal relates to the provision of one dwelling, which the Highway Authority notes will be largely served by a private car. Furthermore, the conversion and the change use of the building to a dwelling constitutes reuse of natural resources, often referred to as environmental capital, and includes not only the materials that a building is constructed from, but also energy expended in manufacturing and transporting those materials. As such, the proposal is wholly consistent with the overarching environmental objective too. Members should consider the recent planning decisions on the adjacent buildings. The buildings have consent to provide 4 dwellings through the conversion of the existing buildings. This proposal is no different in policy terms to the scheme that was approved in September 2019. The local planning authority and the Highway Authority agreed that the conversion of these barns was suitable. There has been no material change in circumstances or indeed policy since this decision has altered the significant judgment of this application. Members should weigh planning history heavily in the decision-making exercise. The Highway Authority state in their response that the application is for a new property in an unsustainable location. Whilst it is to create a new property, it is not a new building, it is a conversion of the existing building. My client would also like me to take this opportunity to clarify, despite the Highway Authority's comments, that there are at least 8 passing places on the access track. The access track is shared and not completely under the applicant's control, but the implementation of planning conditions through the planning permissions that have already been granted has seen the visibility space implemented along with the services at the entrance. To conclude, members should consider their officer recommendation that recognises that this application will not give rise to any adverse impacts from a technical perspective and is acceptable in principle under national and local policy. The authority and the Highway Authority have both accepted through the grant of planning permission on adjacent barns that the reuse of these buildings for residential development would be sustainable development. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you very much. And you didn't need to be reminded of the 5-minute limit as well. Thank you. Members, that's Charlotte L. Hakiem, the Principal Planner at CT Planning, speaking on behalf of the agent for that application. Right, do I have, and you will note, of course, what was said earlier, that despite the report saying it, and the supplementary has actually corrected that fact, but your original report does state that's in the green belt, and it is not. It is not in the West Midlands green belt. I reiterate that point. Yes, indeed. Thank you very much. I was just coming on to that. We just had a note from the legal office to say that Councillor Powell, who's joined us, Hello, Councillor Powell. You will not be able to take part in this first application, but you understand that, I know, but we've just had that message has been reinforced from the legal officer. Thank you very much, Councillor. Thank you very much indeed. But Councillor Powell joined us, I would say it was about 8 minutes past 6 when you joined this meeting, Councillor Powell. Thank you. Okay, members, you've heard the officer's report. You've also heard the evidence there of the agents. The agent, could you please show if you have any comments or questions to ask, please? I've got one. Yes, Councillor Anketel, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm all in favour of more houses. I'm housing, but I'm concerned by the highways officers' comments about safety. There not being a footpath, and it's a very long path. On the other hand, the highways office doesn't seem to have objected to the other conversions along there, and so I'm in a bit of a quandary.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I might abstain on this. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's your choice, of course, Councillor Anketel. Thank you very much. Councillor Ray, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm more comfortable with it myself. And I'm supportive of the recommendation. As Councillor Anketel said, there have been already 2 other dwellings where planning permission has been approved, and the road has been the same, hasn't changed since. And paragraphs 4.5, 4.6, I think are crucial, which references no pavement and street lighting. That's not unusual for a rural location as we have here. And also an important point, which I don't think has been made, that it's not a through road. It is just a road up to a small estate and then back out to the main highway. So I would have to support the recommendation.
Okay, so you're proposing approval there. Thank you, Councillor Ray. Just a couple of questions, planning officer, if I may, Kerry. I know that it's written down that the floor level must be 73.18 metres at least above the ordnance datum. But I didn't see anywhere in the report how that is reflected in the actual floor levels relating to the surrounding area. So I didn't know whether that was sort of 6 inches above the ground level or a foot below or above the ground level. Do you have any idea how that translates into the actual levels? I'm just interested to know, because I do know that area a little bit, and I know that it is subject to potential flooding. It's right on the banks of the River Blythe. And I know it's in flood zones 2 and 3, some of it anyway. And I didn't know whether we knew what the floor levels were relative to the surrounding levels. But as I say, I know the report says it's 73.18 above ordnance datum. But provided the Environment Agency is happy with that, then I don't suppose it's really particularly important to know how that relates to the surrounding ground levels. So I'll leave that one. Doesn't matter, that's fine. Can you just tell me as well, what are the arrangements in terms of the sewage disposal, septic tanks, etc., the fact that it's so close to a river and the potential for flooding, please?
You just bear with me a second.
Okay, sorry. I didn't mean to ask you 2 difficult questions, let's be honest. Do we have anybody else wishes to make any reference? Thank you. I'm going to come on to you then, Councillor Matthews first, please.
I note the County Council's concerns, but I as Councillor Ray, I also support this application. I'm happy to second.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Matthews. Kerry, did you wish to come back?
Yeah, so in answer to your question,
Thank you.
it would be septic tank, and then that would obviously be covered by building regulations as well as if
Okay.
its installation would be
Thank you.
up to.
Thank you very much. And we'll let the other one go about the 73.18 metres, because I'm sure that's almost academic. So, members, any other contributions from anyone? No more questions. Thank you. Okay, so it has been proposed for approval by Councillor Ray. That's in line with the author's recommendation, of course, and also Councillor Matthews has seconded that. So members, could I please have a show of hands, those of you who are wishing to approve this application, as I say, in line with the officer's recommendation, a show of hands, please. I think that's 11. 11, okay. Any against, please? And any abstentions? So we have one abstention. Members, thank you very much indeed. That application has been approved. So I can tell you that 22/00476/COU has been approved. Thank you very much. So if we can move on now to the second application, please. Thank you. So moving on to the second application. And I am joined now by Mr. Richard Sunter, who is Principal Planning Officer here at Lichfield District Council, and he's going to take us through this next application, which is 22/01423/FUH. This is 96 Gaya Lane. So Richard Sunter, thank you very much. If you'll take us through this report, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just before I do that, could you just ask Curry just to give me a bit of assistance with the IT? The cursor isn't going, or you do it on those rather than on this one here. That's fair enough, that's okay. Thank you very much, Kerry, for that. The application before you is for partial demolition of an existing detached building, which is shown there within the red line boundary. And then its extension to front, rear and side. As you can see, it's at Gaya Lane, which is fairly mixed in terms of the character. It's also within the conservation area, and there's a range of building types, building materials, plot to building ratios. What you will also see on the next slide is the relationship that it has to the property adjacent. Now, as you can see, the most adjacent property to it lies to the south, so that shade you can actually see there is cast more to the north. So any shade cast by this potential enlarged property will be towards Gaystow, not towards the property to the south. You can see that by the shadows there. These are views of the house as it stands. It's a detached dwelling. It has a double hipped roof and has a flat single story element to the side. This is the rear of the house, and you can see the adjacent house, which has been extended to the side and rear as well. Part of that, because there's a supplementary report that's been circulated, mentions impact on the electric windows that you can see just about on the roof slope on the side of the property where the red dot is. Just move that away. You can see that there's a velux there. There's another velux to the side of that as well. So that is mentioned and dealt with in the supplemental. These are the existing floor plans. And then looking at the plans of the house as it stands at the moment and within the plot. These are the proposed floor plans, and you can see there's some darker areas. Those darker areas are what would be retained in the building. So there still will be, even though there's still substantial demolition, there's sufficient of the building that would remain that to be extended upon, so that it falls within a householder application and does not represent a new dwelling. This is the application showing the elevations as proposed. Also shows you in the dotted lines what the various previously proposed application as you can see, there's a bold dotted line, fairly square in its shape. That shows the roof type that was proposed in the previous application that was withdrawn from planning committee. And you can also see within the elevational drawing as well, part of the outlines of the property as it stands at the moment to compare what exists, what's now proposed, and what was proposed later, earlier, should I say, in the previous application. Give you a couple of seconds more just to have a look at that. You also see that the proposal also employs a double hip roof and would be built from matching materials. One of the big concerns that's been raised by objectors is the impact of the proposal in relation to its size and scale, and would it fit in with the street scene. As you can clearly see from this particular drawing, that actually it's a very, very similar height, both at the eaves level and at apex level to the adjoining property. Officers' assertion that this proposal, in terms of its size and scale, is not out of character with that of the established street scene. If you go a couple of properties on Gaya Lane, you find quite substantial properties which are even greater in scale than this one that is being proposed. So yes, officers will clearly say there is an increase in volume and mass, but that doesn't lead it to be out of scale with the street scene. And again, this is showing proposals, the previous proposal at the bottom, and then what's proposed at the moment. There are a number of issues which have been raised, impacts on residential amenity. You can see there in that photograph that the garage at the next door neighbour has a sloping roof, lean-to roof. So on that particularly slope, which has the Velux windows, and the concerns raised by the next door neighbour in relation to the impacts of light onto those Velux windows. It's asserted that that proposal would not meet the normal 45 degree test or the 25 degree test that we normally apply. However, that test is not intended to be applied in this particular scenario. The 45 degree test is for extended normally to the rear or to the front when it comes beyond the plane of the rear and the front elevation of the property to be extended, and therefore is applied from the neighbouring window. So it does apply to this particular circumstance where a window is situated within the roof. So that ends the officer presentation. Only to say that in terms of all technical and policy tests, Officer Firm's assertion is that it does meet those. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed to the Planning Officer, Richard Sunter. And we have two speakers for this. We have the non-committee ward member, Councillor Joe Grange. And Councillor Grange, you will have 10 minutes, as you're probably aware. And then we also have Richard Bollins, who is the agent. And Mr. Bollins, you will have 5 minutes to speak. Okay, that is the protocol that we employ here at Lichfield. So, Councillor Grange, I think you're pretty well conversant with how it works. I won't go into any greater detail. You've got 10 minutes or up to 10 minutes. Your time starts as soon as you start speaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, committee, and Happy New Year. I'm aware you've got a full agenda, so I'll try to be quick and focus on the key objections. This proposal is to convert a 3-bedroomed, 1-bathroomed house into a 5-bedroomed, 6-bathroomed house, with the front extension being 2.5 metres forward of the existing dwellings building line, the rear being extended 3 metres into the garden, the ridge height being increased by 1 metre, with a large dormer window serving the new 3rd storey, and a new 2nd storey and roof being built over the existing flat-roofed garage right up against the boundary with number 94. This is a huge amount of extension on a relatively modest plot in the conservation area. The Civic Society describes it as overdevelopment, resulting in a dwelling too dominant for the street scene by reason of its mass, design and height. Excuse me. The rear extension will result in the private amenity space being just 8.8 metres long, falling short of the 10 metres required by the Sustainable Design SPD. Your report quite rightly points out that the SPD allows flexibility, but fails to mention that there are caveats on this, and further states that in applying this flexibility, and I quote, in terms of extending older properties, the surrounding context should also be taken into consideration. If you look at page 23 of your pack, you will see that 96 already has one of the shortest gardens on Gale Lane. The surrounding context is for longer gardens and does not support flexibility being applied to reduce the garden length below 10 metres. The 3 metre rear extension also reduces the separation distance to 6 Gayerstow to 21.7 metres. This is covered in paragraph 3.4 of your report, which says this is in excess of the required 21 metres, but this isn't correct. The SPD states, and again I quote, the distance separation between proposed development and existing development should be increased by 2 metres for every 1 metre rise in ground level, where the proposed development would be on a higher ground level. 96 Gale Lane at 86 metres above sea level is 2 metres higher than 6 Gayerstow at 84 metres above sea level, meaning the required separation distance should be increased by 4 metres to 25 metres. This means the 3 metre rear extension will be 3.3 metres too close to number 6 Gayerstow, resulting in overbearing and compromises to privacy and outlook. This will be exacerbated by the 1 metre increase in ridge height and the dominant new dormer window at the 3rd storey level. Your report has failed to consider the topography and the natural rise of land up from snowfall. Turning to the side extension, your report does not consider the impact this will have on 94 Gale Lane, albeit this was picked up in the supplementary report. The main bedroom at 94, a principal habitable room, is at ground level served by Belloc-style windows in the sloping roof facing number 96. Under the current planning regime, having windows serving a principal habitable room in a side elevation may not be permitted, but that's irrelevant. This council granted permission for these windows in 2006 and we can't ignore them now. The supplementary planning report advises that the 45-degree guideline should be utilised for front and rear extensions, but the SPD states that, quote, the 25-degree guideline shall apply for windows which face the extension without further caveats about orientation, and that breaches of the 25-degree guideline are, quote, likely to have an impact on light received and therefore the impact is likely to be unacceptable. The supplementary planning report does not seek to dismiss the 25-degree guideline applying to side elevations, and there is precedent in this council for considering the 25-degree guideline for side elevations. Excuse me. It is absolutely clear that building a 2nd storey and roof above the existing flat roof, single-storey garage right up to the boundary and less than 1 metre away from these windows will result in loss of outlook and diffuse skylight, which is recognised by the BRE as the more important component of natural light over sunlight. I maybe have the benefits over officers in that I've been into number 94 and seen the bedroom. At the moment, looking out of these windows, you see sky, and the space is flooded with skylight. If this proposal goes ahead, the only view will be of a very close, very high, solid brick wall, blocking light and outlook and being completely overbearing. Your supplementary report states that an element of separation is being retained. This element of separation will be mere centimetres up to 1st floor level, and due to the front and rear extension, the new building over the existing flat roof garage and the increase in ridge height, the windows which currently let in light diffused from a number of directions will suffer far more than a mere marginal loss of light, as is suggested in your supplementary report. The front extension will be 2.5 metres forward of the existing building line of the dwelling, not within the current building line as stated at paragraph 3.4 of your report. This, along with the building right up to the boundary with 94, will impact the street scene. At the moment, there is a feeling of space created by the 2 single-storey garages of 94 and 96 being side by side. Numbers 98 and 96 are a mirror pair, marking the entrance to Gayerstow. Having one so much bigger than the other will destroy this symmetry and look unbalanced, again impacting the street scene. Extending 2.5 metres forward of the existing building line will exacerbate this imbalance. I don't need to remind the committee that the features of conservation areas include, amongst other things, vistas along streets, property boundaries and the spaces between buildings. This proposal would negatively impact all these factors, and the report hasn't considered the vistas from the Parchments and Gayerstow. In summary, there are valid planning matters which allow the committee to go against the officer's recommendation, because there are matters that haven't been considered in your report, and you can apply different weighting to the matters that have. This is overdevelopment of a modest plot in the conservation area. The back garden would be too short, and the surrounding context is for longer gardens, meaning flexibility should not be applied. There has been no consideration of the topography and the resultant requirement for increased separation, and the rear extension is 3.3 metres too close to 6 Gayerstow, resulting in overbearing, loss of privacy and outlook. There has been little consideration of the impact on the ground floor principal habitable room at number 94 and the breach of the 25-degree guideline, which will be exacerbated by the front and rear extensions, increased rig tide, resulting in a significant loss of diffuse skylight and outlook. There has been inadequate consideration of the impact on the street scene in the context of the conservation area, and no consideration at all of the impact of the rear extension on the vistas from the Parchments and Gayerstow. There is no demonstrable net gain to biodiversity unless we believe that a single bird box can compensate for the small mammals and millions of bugs potentially lost from fully paving the front garden and losing more than 40 square metres of the rear garden. It is only on balance, as described on page 33, that the interference with the Article 8 human right for respect for private and family life is considered justifiable. I'd argue that the impact on the master bedroom at 94 alone is sufficient to shift this balance. I urge the committee to refuse this application. Whilst each of the factors individually may not warrant refusal, there is a cumulative impact of issues caused by the house simply being too big for the plot, with the result that it does not represent high-quality, sustainable design and would have severe detrimental impacts on the residential amenity of both future residents of the extended dwelling and its neighbours. Excuse me, and it will have an unacceptable impact on the conservation area. Thank you. Before I cough again.
Councillor Graves, thank you very much indeed. You didn't take the full 10 minutes, but you did pack a lot of information into the time that you spoke. And I know that as the ward member, you've taken quite an interest in this application, and indeed the previous 2 or 3 iterations as well of this application. Thank you for that. So we now move on to the next speaker, who is the agent, and this is Mr. Richard Bollens, Chartered Architectural Technologist. And Mr. Bollens, you have 5 minutes, and with 30 seconds still to go, you will be reminded of the fact that you only have half a minute. So your 5 minutes will start as soon as you commence speaking. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time this evening. This project started back in January 2022 from the submission of the plan application, and we've worked collaboratively with the planning and conservation departments to form the final proposal put forward to you tonight. The ethos of the project is to provide a modern day family home in an established residential area of Lichfield. This is sustainably located within the settlement boundaries for Lichfield as defined in the local plan. I would like to highlight that the NPPF sets out a presumption in favour of sustainable development, which is echoed in the Lichfield District Local Plan, Strategy Called Policy 2. The applicant is in full agreement with the case officer's report that it satisfies the principal planning policies, the local plan, and the NPPF. The report confirms that there are no technical matters in dispute, that the scheme is wholly acceptable on all grounds. It is agreed by officers that the proposals meet the design requirements of policy BE1 and core policy CP3 of the Lichfield Local Plan Strategy. The alterations to the existing house do not conflict with local or national policy. The scale, form and overall design is fully acceptable by the officers in terms of the street scene, the impact on the surrounding dwellings and the conservation area. In fact, the proposal would have, and I quote, neutral impact and therefore preserve the character, appearance and significance of the Lichfield City Conservation Area. This is all in accordance with policy BE1, BE2 and core policy CP14 of the Lichfield Local Plan Strategy. The front wall as part of the application will also be fully retained, which forms an integral part of the street scene. Some local residents have raised concern about residential amenity. The extensions have been designed to meet the 45-degree guidance requirements as set out in the Sustainable Design SPD. There will be no impact on the neighbouring properties as all principal windows meet or exceed the distance between main windows and the 45-degree guideline requirements as defined in the Sustainable Design SPD, so that no right to light is affected. Regarding buildability and health and safety, it should be noted that a pre-construction plan is not required to obtain planning permission, but a construction phase plan will be undertaken by the main contractor appointed to the project before works commence on site. This will outline the health and safety arrangements, site rules, and any specific measures concerning any work involving the risks listed in the CDM 2015 regulations. Outdoor private amenity space exceeds the requirement for a 5-bedroom house by 33%, and this does not include any side or front amenity space. Therefore, a high standard of residential amenity space will be maintained for all existing and future occupiers of the property and those of neighbouring properties in accordance with policy CP3 and BE1 of the Lichfield Local Plan Strategy and paragraph 130F of the NPPF. The Highways Department have no objections. The proposals cater for 3 off-road parking spaces suitable for a 5-bedroom property, which meets the requirements of policy ST2 of the local plan and guidance within the Sustainable Design SPD. Policy NR3 of the local plan strategy states that development will only be permitted where it protects, enhances, restores and implements appropriate conservation management of the biodiversity of the land and buildings. The report concludes that the proposal would not cause harm to the existing biodiversity, and the applicant is happy to include provision of a bird box within the site. The final matter of concern regarding the surface water runoff from the front driveway. This will be a permeable design to allow water to naturally drain away with the addition of a drainage channel to the back edge of the pavement. In conclusion, the proposed extensions do neither impact or harm the neighbourhood, character of the locality, conservation area, highway safety or biodiversity. In light of this, with both planning and conservation area officers in agreement and all relevant policies being met, I trust the committee agree with the officers to approve this application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much indeed there to Richard Bollens, the applicant's agent. Members, you've seen the presentation by Richard Sunter, the planning officer, and you've heard the arguments for and against. Against has been given by Councillor Grange, and then you've just heard Mr. Richard Bollens putting the case for as the agent on behalf of the applicant. Members, do we have comments, observations or questions, please? Councillor Barnett, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I believe I did read in all the information we were sent that there was a concern about at some time, because of the number of bathrooms, it might be proposed that multi-occupation could be applied for. Is there a condition which prevents this to safeguard it becoming that kind of property? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to pass that one over to the planning officer, Richard Sunter. Just please come back on that one.
No, there isn't a condition requiring that it was to remain and not go into multiple occupation. That'd have to be determined on its merits at the time, whether they can lawfully do that, i.e. 6 people sharing accommodation. If it goes beyond that, then it needs a planning application in its own right, which will be determined on its merits. But it is a householder application for extensions and we don't normally put on conditions of that type for household application, even where there are significant additions to that property. And we'd have to justify we did it in this case, why we're doing it in this case and no other case. Because I'm never aware throughout the whole of my career of a condition being put on to an household type of application for extensions to stop it from becoming multiple occupation.
Can I just ask there, so if there was a wish for it to become an HMO, a home of multiple occupancy, would that require another planning application?
Not necessarily, because up to 6 people can share accommodation, live as a family unit, even though they're not related. And that doesn't result in a material change of use. But that goes for any dwelling, that's lawful. So we wouldn't be looking to restrict that.
Okay, so I mean, I suppose from a resident's point of view, they would be slightly disconcerted if they thought that that were to be occupied by 6 independent people, each with a car, if I can be hypothetical.
I can understand those concerns. Chair, but like I say, the application in front of us is for an extension to a dwelling house, not for an HMO, nor is an HMO being mentioned in any of the documents that have been submitted. We have to look at this on its own planning merits as it stands at the moment. There'll be nothing to stop that dwelling at the moment being shared with the number of bedrooms it's got, or any other application which we deal with, which goes from 2 or 3 bedrooms to 4, 5, 6. We don't normally put on any conditions on that, and there's no difference in this case that I can see that would merit putting on such a condition on that.
Thank you, Richard Sunter. Councillor Powell, please, you were expressing a desire to speak. Councillor Powell.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Again, apologies for being slightly late. I was doing the Pasadobly. That's true. Just a quick one. When it comes to HMOs, I don't want to drag this into this too much, but they do have to be certificated. So if they were ever to come back, if it ever was to be announced that they wanted to do an HMO, they still have to get a specific certification to which the council is able then to object on whatever grounds it wishes to at the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Councillor Ray, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And Richard's son took a couple of the photos up and the graphic up in a moment. I just get to it. I think where I'm at with it, I don't have issues with the street scene, the scale, the massing, the drainage issues, but I have concerns about the impact on the neighbouring property at number 94 and 45 degree and 25 degree rule. So the first photo, if you could just put up, is the photograph from the, yes, of number 94. That's 96, isn't it? Yeah. You did have one with number 94, I think, of the street scene, yeah. No, okay. You're not aware. All right, okay. The point I was going to make is, I think just so members are aware, from when you look at number 94, it might look like 90 that the single story. The ground level story is just a garage. It isn't. There is a bedroom and there is a bathroom. There is an habitable room in there, a principal habitable room. This council gave planning permission for that. I think at the time that planning permission was requested, they were given guidance that they shouldn't apply for a story to be put above it. So the guidance was for a single story and hence for habitable rooms. And I mentioned at the beginning of the as a part of sort of transparency, I had contact with the owners of number 94. And although I haven't been in the property like Councillor Grange has, I was shown a video and going through the rooms and looking out from this developed windows. And as Councillor Grange said, the view will be of brick. Yeah, at the moment there is separation to the current external wall of the property. And then if you could just the graphic, the drawings. Yeah. Just go back one, Richard. You would. No.
Those are as it stands at the moment.
Yeah, didn't you have one with the neighbouring property showing number 96?
Let me just go through the.
Yeah, could I?
What I was going to make was. So now on the, yeah. So at the moment, it's this external wall, where that comes from, I think it's to, yeah. Yes, okay, yeah. So you can see, so if you're looking out through the bedroom windows, this is, yeah, this is what I've got. It looks like a garage, it isn't, yeah. It needs to have a visible roof behind it, and then so at the moment, you look out that window, considering this property like the building line is there, you can see the amount of light that is going into that property. So I wanted to make that point to members. And then
I've just finished, and then please come back. I was just going to then say that I understand the points that have been made about the SPD and the council's SPD. What I would just add, and Councillor Grange made some points, is that, and I looked at it this afternoon, Appendix A, it refers to, when you look at SPD, the Appendix A of the SPD, you need to be looking at the quantity of light and the quality of light. I would argue that even if you could argue that on interpretation, as you've interpreted, of the 45-degree rule, nevertheless, the quality of the light going into that side extension of number 94 must be impacted. It also, that SPD references the overbearing impact. So that's another aspect, not just light, it's actually the overbearing impact. So you look out those Venice windows, as I just demonstrated, you are looking about, is it a metre away at brick, as opposed to at the moment, obviously there is a lot of light before you at the moment. So I would just, that's where I am with my thinking. And as I see it, I understand the points that have been made about the 45 and the 25-degree rule, but I'm viewing those as guidelines which can be interpreted. And when I read the SPD, I think it clearly references that they should be interpreted in that way. So that's where I am, members.
Going to before we go on to Councillor Chapman, thank you very much, Councillor Ray, for that. Richard Sun, do you just wish to come back, I think, and answer some of the points made by Councillor Ray?
thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, just to demonstrate again, because you are correct, yeah. It's a comparison between the existing scenario here, where you have got an elevation which is set well back, and what you've got here, which is bound to take some light, and officers are saying they won't take some light. However, the 25-degree and the 45-degree test are actually intended for windows in this location, not in the roof slope. Now, we have guidance, I would refer to the standards or technical guides or whatever, but they're never designed for all scenarios. And that's the problem, that you always come up with something which the guide wasn't strictly intended to do. And then you're left with a matter of judgment of how much impact would there be or not. So I don't like looking straight forward out of a window and applying a 25-degree or a 45-degree line, which is what the guidance tells us to do. The other thing, again, in terms of loss of light, because is again this particular arrangement here, and this is what swung it for me, is that when you actually look at the shade cast, that the shade is actually cast in this direction belongs to the top. In fact, most shade for the window is actually resulting from the object itself. Elevation, that is demonstrated here, and certainly on other Google images that I've seen. So it was something that we did consider before we did the supplemental. And again, it's on balance, thinking how much of that light is taken, how much is already compromised, and it was that on balance that we thought it was acceptable. But I can understand why it is a bit confusing about applying criteria which were meant for this particular situation.
Yeah, and so Chair, could I just, thanks for explaining that point, and I do understand that point, but the point I was also making was about overbearing, yes? So you've got light and also the fact that the view now is a metre away, which if you clearly identified is a very different view that, and also the final point I would make is, with the applicant of number 96, obviously there are options, it can be redesigned, it's not really the development can't go ahead, it could just be redesigned to allow, accommodation for number 94.
Councillor Ray, thank you very much, and thank you to Richard Sunter as well. In terms of the light, I mean, looking at the pictures just a moment ago, it struck me that the most likely impact, were this to go ahead, would be the early morning sun, the rising sun, and that would be considerably reduced, I think, were this application to go ahead in the way that is envisaged at the moment. Councillor Chetland, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to this Phillips window, it does cause me some concerns. My only real query is this the only light into that room, or does it have, it's the only light into that room? That probably answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. So yeah, that's the only light source. I think it's 2 Velux windows, isn't it? 2 Velux windows? Yeah, thank you. Incidentally, the occupant of 94 Gale Lane, to whom has been referred by Councillor Ray, has registered an objection. You will all have seen that, I think, because that was part of the evidence that was submitted. If you go onto the planning portal, and I think all members of the planning committee may have had sight of that letter as well, that email too. Thank you. Councillor Powell, next, please.
Yes, again, thank you, Chair. Just a quick one to the officer. If this development goes ahead, would its actual footprint stroke massing be that much greater than number 94, or would it be more or less about the same when it was completed? Slightly difficult one to answer, because it's I think it's that the one at 94 has been extended in different ways. I mean, the footprint you can see is quite substantial to the head of the 2 semis. So that has been extensively extended as 94. But I think the main telling point from myself was looking at this particular drawing, where you can see that in terms of its massing and scale as viewed from the street scene, okay, you could be arguing, well, you haven't shown one from Gaia Stowe or from the side. However, particularly from this, I don't think that it's out of scale with the surrounding property. And the conservation officer has also commented on that from a conservation point of view, because it is in a conservation area, albeit this particular building itself doesn't offer anything to the conservation area, and that's set out in our own conservation area assessment. But cutting things to the chase, I don't think it's out of scale or mass with the adjacent property.
Councillor Salter, please.
Thank you, Chair. There was mention in the presentation that the front elevation would be brought forwards by, I forget the meterage now, but looking at the plan, the location layout, when you zoom in, it is already well behind the neighbouring front line. So would it project further than the existing front line of the neighbour, or bring it more or less in line?
Yeah. Through you, Chair, you can see here that it's actually on this particular drawing, it shows it being on the similar sort of line as the front elevation of the neighbouring property.
Thank you.
And as you've said, when you look at that image,
yeah,
and you look at the property, you can see that the existing property is set back from the road than the one that's adjacent to.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Salter. Just a couple of questions from me. Oh, and Councillor Chetland next, please.
Just to follow up on that one, really. Previous experience from a planning application was when light was likely to be lost. This is down as a bedroom, so it's the amount of light that comes in the principle that was taken was that there was a condition put on that the wall be painted white so that all reflective light then also went in through that particular window. I just wonder whether that's something to consider.
Thank you, Councillor Checkland. Yes, Richard, please.
It is something to consider if you wish to have a condition of that type put on.
Richard, can I just ask, please? I'm not sure. I don't think I saw in the report where it was suggested that as a condition, were this to go ahead, we'd have the removal of permitted development rights. Is that incorporated into this or not?
It's not incorporated at the moment, but again, that's something for members to decide that should they wish to remove permitted development rights. Then that's something that they could exercise. I think it's probably more or less expands about what PD rights do allow. That if members wanted to take more comfort with that and put on a condition, that's something which permitted rights.
Thank you.
It's something that they could.
Okay, we'll come on to that. Yes, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Chair. On Councillor Checkland's points, good idea with respect to painting the wall white for reflective light, but would that be permitted in a conservation area?
I can't see why not. I mean, there are a number of properties. I think you probably see on this one. You see the one at the back, also floating on the Gale Lake. That's got a white elevation, so there's no reason why, in principle, that a coating or a render could be applied. Again, it would be to a side elevation and not one that would be particularly noticeable either. So again, if you thought that would alleviate some of the issues, something which you could consider as a condition.
Can I just ask Councillor Ray, please? Oh, I beg your pardon, Councillor Evans. I do apologise. Councillor Evans.
Yes, Chairman. Somewhere I've seen that this is now going to be a 3-storey building, but can the planning officer tell me if a 3-storey building, when this is a loft conversion, does it count as a 3-storey building? Because the loft conversion window is on the back anyway.
This would normally be regarded as a 2-storey building with living space in the roof. So it is 2-storey. Sometimes when you get applications like this, they're often referred to as 2.5-storey. But I would say that this is a normal 2-storey dwelling. And again, looking at that particular proposal, you can see it's the same to Eve's Eye and roughly the same to Apex Eye as the 2-storey building next door. I would refer it to as a 2-storey building with accommodation in the roof.
Richard, if I can just ask, please. I think this is the 3rd or 4th iteration of this application. And each time it has got a little bit smaller, it's reduced in size, but it's still maintained the desire for 5 bedrooms. I suppose I'm slightly puzzled by that. I'm almost thinking, if it's going to be that much smaller, why not have a 4-bedroom property rather than 5 bedrooms crammed into what is conceivably a much smaller building than was envisaged? And also, I believe that there isn't going to be very much of the original property left, is there? Because we're having rear, side and front extensions. So does that mean that the only wall that's left remaining effectively is the one side wall?
Thank you, Chair. Not in particular. I mean, what you would see on this particular diagram here is that the original proposal went further towards Gaius Dome, and therefore that elevation would have had to be taken out as well. Now, just turning to the footprint of what will be remaining, you can see that in the darker areas that both walls on both sides will be retained at ground floor level, and this would be retained at 2-storey level. That's sufficient for the house to be still existing and to be extended on. It is a fine line of where do you draw the line between how far do you demolish a house before it becomes a new house. I think this is on the cusp, but on the right side of the cusp, to still represent an extension to an existing dwelling.
Okay, as you say, that is a judgment call, isn't it, really?
It is a judgment call, yeah. I would just say that, part of my judgment is informed by previous applications I've dealt with on this, where previously as officers at other authority, we did look into this issue.
Councillor Ray, please. Thank you. And Councillor Salter afterwards. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I was just going to, I quite like the imaginative idea of painting the wall white, but can I just get back to the point I was making previously, that it's not just the light, it's the overbearing nature of that wall from those deluxe windows. Yeah, and as Councillor Jenkins said, that is the sole window in that habitable room. So
Okay.
I don't know when the debate, how far the debate's got to go, but I would be proposing refusal.
Thank you, Councillor Ray. That's very apposite because I was just about to say we need to wind this up. So you slightly preempted my comments there. So we're very close, I think, to winding this application up and this debate. Councillor Salter, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we've had a couple of fairly recent situations where a dwelling has had, I'll just read, significant extensions to front, side and rear. And when the development commences, it's been discovered that the existing structure is unsuitable to take this amount of increase because of the nature of the weights involved, the stresses involved. And it's ended up with a complete demolished, particularly a complete demolition and start again. What sort of powers or conditions can we put up front to say, should it be found that this development can't go ahead because a wall isn't sound or whatever? Is there anything we can put in place to oversee the development of this, that it's done as in accordance with the application? Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
I would say that there's no need for any condition to be applied in that respect. The reason being that if this development cannot go ahead in its form, if it falls down by accident or design, it no longer exists, that it would be no building left to extend. In which case, the applicant would need to reapply for an all new dwelling on that site, presumably in accordance with the details that then come forward with on this one. So yes, it's up for them to make sure that this is a deliverable scheme. The risk is entirely theirs. Make it very, very clear to the architect that should this fall down or be demolished, in the process of demolition fall down, then there would no longer be a permission to implement. They would have to come in for a new dwelling. And I'm sure that there's ways of building this out. You can extend the building before you demolish some of the internals of the roof. So there are ways of making sure that this building is retained during the construction phase, demolition phase, in a manner which can be rebuilt. And if it can't be, then it's their risk. They will need to come in for a new application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Richard Hunter. Yes, we've had one or two examples in the last couple of years where something similar has happened. You're absolutely right, Councillor Salter. Thank you. Members, we've actually had Councillor Ray. He's actually proposing refusal. Do we have anyone willing to second that? Yes, I will be. Yes, indeed. So Councillor Barnett, thank you. Before we pursue that one, I will need to ask for the reasons that you are considering for refusal in your proposal, please.
Yeah. I think the reasons would be the overbearing impact of the outer wall of number 96 and the impact on the habitable room in the ground floor of 94, and also the interpretation of the 45 and 25 degree rule, that there is flexibility. They are guidelines, there is flexibility in interpreting those. And I think considering they are principal habitable rooms, with one deluxe window, they should be interpreted flexibly in favour of the owner of number 94.
So we probably need slightly more than that, I would say. Are we looking at overdevelopment? Are we suggesting overdevelopment here?
No, for me, I'm not, the massing isn't a particular concern for me. It is that overbearing impact on number 94 of the development due to the
and the 25-degree and 45-degree light implications as well. Thank you. Do we have any other? Yes, councillor.
The effect on the street scene, I think it would be overbearing in the conservation area.
Thank you very much. I think that's already been more or less covered by Councillor Ray when he said it was overbearing. I think that probably incorporates what you're saying there, but its effect on the street scene. Okay, thank you. I can see that the planning officer, Richard Sumter, wishes to come back. Thank you.
Right, just to make the observation that the two issues are quite different. One is impact on residential amenity via partial loss of light, but also overbearing structure, which would result in less than a high standard of residential amenity to the occupiers of number 94. The other one is, again, the impact by size, scale and mass on the street scene and the character and appearance of the conservation area. If you do vote on that, I would just add the note of caution that the conservation officer has looked at this and he has not objected to this. He finds it as appropriate scale, and also just to look at again whether or not you do feel that as a matter of fact and degree that it would be out of scale, given that it's a very similar height level at eaves and at apex to the neighbouring property, albeit on this particular elevation, you're not seeing it from the side.
Can I just make the point that some of the points which have been raised as reasons there are iterated or reiterated, I suppose, by the Lichfield Civic Society on page 26 of your report. You read that, that probably sums up very much what we're talking about here. Yes, indeed, yeah. Mrs. Billings, the development manager, wishes to come in here.
Thank you, Chair. I think before you take a vote on terms of the reasons for refusal, I need to be clear which policies that we are concerned that it's contrary to in terms of those elements. It would be helpful that that's enunciated before we take any vote and be clear whether it's one or two reasons for refusal. If we can just clarify which policies and be clear on the wording of the reason for refusal before any vote is taken, that would be really helpful.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Billings. I'm just wondering whether it's contrary to BE1, high quality design, etc. If you could just give some guidance on that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to look for some guidance on what policy is, but it's the SPD Appendix A, paragraph 7. That's what I was focused on. I don't know what policy that falls under, but I was just going to say to Councillor Barn and maybe the committee that I know you've raised the point about the street scene. I think what Claire Billings raises is a sort of valid point that hasn't been raised. The conservation officer has been okay with that, and I just maybe do we focus on the overbearing impacts on 94, because even as Richard Sumter said, it is a judgment. There is a judgment there. The officers have made a judgment, but they have said that there is, except there is an interpretation being made of the guidelines there, which we could, as opposed, I think the conservation officer seems to be clear in his or her position. So I'll leave it to the committee, but I think we go with two objections as opposed to one, I'd suggest.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Ray. Yes, Councillor.
If I may just come back, very often I know areas are designated as conservation areas for a variety of reasons, but within that is the scope to say the conservation officer says, but if you've got to live with it, it might be a big difference. So whilst I can support the conservation officer, there are some in this instance, we're asked for an opinion. Councillor Ray has very clearly raised an opinion, and therefore I will support him because I think it is too large for the site and it imposes itself too much on the conservation area.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Barnett. Thank you. So we've got the overbearing impact. I think we've got the, we still want to have the loss of life implications as well, I think, yes? Yeah, okay. The effect on the street scene in a conservation area. And were there any other ones? Loss of amenity. Loss of amenity? Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, Chair, I didn't realise that that was part of the vote and seconded in terms of a further, so 4 reasons for refusal we're looking at here, are we?
Do we want to have loss of amenity or not? No? Okay, I think you're fairly equivocal about that. Councillor Anketel, please. Councillor Anketel.
Okay, it's on now. At a previous meeting, we were told that it's better to have 1 or 2 good reasons than a lot of reasons, which gives the impression that the reasons are weak.
Correct, thank you. So we're going to whittle that down probably to 2 then, perhaps. It's overbearing impact and also the effect on the street scene in a conservation area. Well, let's have the 3 then. We need to have the 3 because, so loss of light, the overbearing impact, and also the effect on the street scene in the conservation area. Are we happy with that? No. Okay, we've arrived at a decision. Councillor, Mrs. Billings.
That's fine. So it's just being clear on the policies that we feel, because obviously as officers we've set out in terms of the SPD and that it's considered by officers that there are elements of, or the as a whole, the SPD guidance is met. So we need to be very clear which parts of that, because obviously in terms of defence of any appeal, we need to be very clear, and we need to be clear in terms of the particular policies. You've made reference, Chair, in terms of BE1, and also you've referred to, Councillor Ray's referred to the SPD, a sustainable design SPD. So we need to be clear on it. What would be helpful, be clear on in terms of which parts. I understand the overbearing, yeah, in terms of that, and loss of light in terms of BE1. But with regard to the 45-25 degree, that has been clarified that it's not considered, it breaches such.
Mrs. Billing, can I just come back on that? Perhaps if we're looking for distinct policies, I'd suggest core policy 3 of the local plan strategy, which states that development should protect and enhance the character and distinctiveness of Lichfield district and be of a scale and nature appropriate to its locality. That, I think, sums up some of the points that we've been making. Members, do you agree with that at all? Core policy 3, if you want to have a look at that, reference is made on page 29 of your report under 2.1. Do you think that's a reason? Yes, okay.
Just to give you some information on policies for the 2 main reasons, which I see. One is impacts on the standard of residential amenity by virtue of the dominance, the loss of light at number 94. The relevant policies would be CP3, BE1, and paragraph 130 in brackets F, close brackets, of the NPPF. The paragraph 130 F says that planning decisions should result in a high standard of residential amenity for all future and current occupiers. So that is one thing that you could bring to bear as well from national policy in relation to impacts on the standard of residential amenity of the occupiers of number 94. In relation to the impact on the character and form of the area by virtue of its mass, you're also, and I think it was yourself, sorry sir, that I can't remember your name.
Yeah, Councillor Ray.
Councillor Ray, sorry, Councillor Ray. that you did mention appendix A of the residential, of the sustainable design guide. So that would also be appropriate there and in relation to the tests there. In relation.
Could I just interrupt you?
Yeah,
And
sure.
paragraph 7, I'll just read it out. External obstructions can affect the quality and quantity of light entering an adjacent property. New development extensions should not be of a size that results in an overbearing impact on neighbouring residential property. The council applies 45 and 25-degree daylight guidelines. Yeah, I think that's, for me, that's a key paragraph.
Could you just let us know what paragraph number of that is? Paragraph 7 then of appendix A of the sustainable design guide. Right.
Okay, thank you. Just reference BE1, I did mention BE1 earlier. And again, on page 29, it says the local plan strategy states development will be permitted where it can be clearly and convincingly demonstrated that it will have a positive impact on new development in terms of layout, size, scale, design, and public views. The policy continues to expand on this point, advising that good design should be informed by appreciation of context, as well as plan, scale, proportion, and detail. So, personally, do you think there is a case for saying it contravenes BE1? Would that be fair to say or not? No? Do I not have it? No. Okay, that's fine. What about policy 3, core policy 3, states the development should be protect and enhance the character and distinctiveness of Lichfield district and be of a scale and nature appropriate to its locality. Do you think it contravenes that? No? Oh, you think, well, no, it's not a case of why not. We're not just looking to put as many things in as possible. It has to be appropriate.
With respect, Chairman, it would appear that a recommendation has been made for refusal.
Yes, indeed.
It has been seconded.
Yes.
And it seems somehow we're scratching around to find reasons to support.
No, that's fine.
Refusal.
That's fine, Councillor
And I
Barnett.
think with respect.
No.
We have
We have.
proved within reason a point about refusal. If you put it to the vote, you may well find that the recommendation will fall.
Okay.
We
Thank
don't
you.
know until we take a vote.
Indeed. So can we include core policy 3 then of the local plan strategy? Yes. Is that okay or not? Okay. Yes, Claire Billings wishes to come in, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think what's just been clear is that BE1 of the local plan strategy is a broad policy in terms of what it refers to, and it refers to layout, size, scale, design, and public views. So it's about a more generic in terms of amenity impact and so forth. So it is a broad policy that has regard to those matters that you have mentioned and have concerns over this evening. As does the sustainable design SPD in a broader sense, and certainly there's criteria within that appendix A that's been referred to tonight. And also CP3 is a broad policy that you could refer to. So if members would wish to move refusal on those 3 elements that you talked about, then it may be appropriate that those policies that we've just gone through are of relevance. What would be helpful before going to the vote, if you can just summarise clearly what the reasons for refusal are and the list of policies that you're clear, and then go to the vote, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Well, starting off with the list of policies then, it's core policy 3, BE1, and paragraph 7, I think it was, of the sustainable design SPD. Is that correct? Yeah. Is that right?
Yes, correct. And you've referred to the contrary to those policies because of the overbearing impact on number 94, and the loss of light to number 94, and the effect on the street scene and the character of the conservation area.
That's correct. Thank you, Claire. Thank you. Members, are you clear with that now? Sorry, it was a rather exhaustive process. Richard Sunter wishes to come in.
I just would also add that if you are minded to refuse it on grounds of impact on the conservation area, 2 other policies are applicable to that. One is CP14, which is about protecting our heritage and built environment, and policy BE2 of the local plans allocations, which again is a policy which deals with designated heritage assets, which a conservation area is.
That's CP 14 and BE 2 members, okay? Are we happy to include those? Is that all right? Reference to the National Planning Policy Framework, that is, yes, thank you. Members, thank you. As I say, a fairly exhaustive process and also an exhausting process, certainly from the chair's perspective. Members, we've had a proposal for refusal by Councillor Ray. We've had that seconded by Councillor Barnett. Could I please have a show of hands based on the reasons which we have just enunciated? Thank you. Sorry, yes, for refusal, yes. So those in favour of refusal of this application, please. Okay, that's 2. And those in favour of, yes, sorry, those against refusal. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Is that 8? That's 8 against refusal, and any abstentions? 1 abstention, Councillor Anketel. 2 abstentions, sorry, I beg your pardon, Councillor Checkland. So, members, the recommendation at the foot of your report on page 33 is for approval. Can I have a show of hands? Councillor Checkland.
Sorry, Chair. If we are going to go forward, I'd like to propose we put a condition on in relation to the painting of the wall white, which will increase the amount of light that comes in.
Okay.
Hence my abstention on the last one.
Mrs. Billings, yes.
So if you'd like to add in a condition, then you need to take a further vote on that. So if you want to put forward, I need somebody to move it and second that for an additional condition on the officer recommendation.
In that case, I'll move.
There was also a suggestion that you maybe
Okay, so painting the wall white, which is what was suggested there by Councillor Ray, I think, and Councillor Checkland is proposing that. Do we have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Salter. And also it was mooted that permitted development rights might be removed. Do we have anyone willing to propose and second that? So Councillor Powell is proposing that. Councillor Baker is seconding that, the removal of permitted development rights. Members, could I please have a show of hands, those in favour of approval of this application as is written in the conclusion on page 33 of your report? Subject to the conditions which have just been spoken of. Show of hands, please. Those in support.
Are you asking us to agree to have it painted white and
that is part of the approval process. Yes, it is, Councillor Latham. So we've already had a vote on those 2 conditions, which have. Okay, so can we have a vote if you want to agree to including those 2 conditions in this? Thank you very much. We'll take them separately. Okay. Members, the first one is for the wall to be painted white so as to alleviate the effect of the adjacent building when it has been enlarged. Do you wish that wall to be painted white? Show of hands, please. Thank you. Keep your hands up, please. Those against? 2, 3. Okay, thank you very much. We now move on to the second condition, removal of permitted development rights. Those who agree to the removal of permitted development, please. I think that's everyone, isn't it? Yeah, that's NEMCOM. Thank you very much indeed. And so if we can now take a vote on approval of the application, subject to those conditions, please. Yeah, so that's 11, none against, so that's we've had two, well, sorry, and those who are against the proposal, sorry, we've already established it's 2, but thank you very much indeed for that, sorry. Members, in that case, then we have voted to approve the application which we've been discussing there, which is the 22/01423 FUH 96 Gale Lane. That has been approved. Thank you very much indeed. I'm proposing we just have a 2 or 3 minute break, members. If anybody wants to go and get a drink, if somebody'd like to bring me a drink of water, I'd be ever so grateful, please. Thank you. Just have a couple of minutes break and then we'll reconvene. Thank you. ready to start again, or restart, I should say. The next application on your report is 22/01533/FUH. It's the erection of a detached double garage, and it's part retrospective at 9 Foden Close, Shenston. To take us through this report, I have on my right Mr. Richard Sunter, Principal Planning Officer. Richard, when you're ready, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, this application is for a detached double garage to the front of the property that you see in front of you, Foden Close, number 9 Foden Close. One of the things just to take from this particular screen shot is the nature of Foden Close. There isn't any great established building line to the street. You've got buildings in slightly different locations, some set forward more than others. This proposal is for a detachable garage in this location here, which is to the side of an existing garage which exists, albeit the proposed garage will project forward of the front of the plane of the front elevation of the existing garage by 3 meters. You will see, I might be just better to make out on this particular photograph that before work commenced on this property, there was a brick wall which in effect joined the linked garage, integral garage of the property to virtually the detached garage at the neighbouring property. And we'll come back to that because I think that's important about looking at impacts on the street scene. This is the property as it currently exists. It's in a state of being updated, refurbished, call it what you wish, amended. And you can see in this location is where the proposed garage is to be. And again, there's a couple of shots there to get that into perspective. Again, some shots of the site. You can see that the existing integral garage, which serves the property, is in the process of being converted to living accommodation. There's also been a porch to the front put on. Those don't form part of this application, which is purely for the detached double garage. You can also see that some footings have been put down, which is why this is called part retrospective, because works have started on some of the footings of the garage. These are the elevations of the garage. You can see, and its location there. You can see from that there will be an extension of the drive that would cut across what was currently or originally a small garden area. Is actually private driveway at this element. So at that point, there's the public highway stop, and then you've got the private drive serving number 9 and number 11. And as you can see from that, the garage will project 3 meters in front of the plane of the front elevation of the existing garage. Now, the next couple of slides I'm going to show you have been supplied by the objector, which purports to show how the garage would look in its context. I will offer a word of caution about this because it is a bit of a science of how you Photoshop into a photograph, a structure, and for it to be realistic. It also seems to be on the premise that the garage would project 4 meters in front of the front plane of the existing garage, which is incorrect. It would be 3 meters. But I include these because they have been supplied by the objector in order to illustrate the points that he would like to make. And again, you've got that photoshopped in. Remember, it's 3 meters in front of the existing garage, not the 4 as purported to be shown in this particular photograph. Now, in addition to that, some photographs have been also provided by the objector, this actually shows quite well that in effect, before any of the works started on this site, there was that brick wall, and you can see that brick wall roughly where that red dot is now. Can you see it curving round from the end of the garage? It comes round. So actually, when you're actually looking down Foden Close, originally there would have been a brick wall in its place there. And behind that brick wall, you can see there's a bit of a structure. Got some photographs of those to show you a little bit later on in the presentation. That shows again a photograph from the objector, which shows purports to show the relationship and any loss of light or impact on the windows of the property. And this is a photograph provided by the objector stating, well, why doesn't the applicant put the garage in that location rather than one that is being proposed? Well, at the end of the day, we're here to determine the application on its merits in the location that has been proposed, not where it may be proposed or otherwise better placed in the opinion of other people. Now, again, this shows, these are photographs from the applicant showing that, yeah, okay, there's been footings put down and some walls grown, but actually it's not intended to build out the garage to those dimensions. It is proposed to build them so it would extend 3 meters beyond the plane of the existing garage. And then these are some pictures which shows what was on site beforehand. We can see the brick wall, roughly 2 meters in height, I would suggest, which enclosed that space. So the space at the end of Foden Close wasn't open. It was closed off by that wall originally. And behind that wall, then you can see that there was a rather makeshift lean-to, which has been demolished to make way for the extension that's been proposed. And that was the garden behind. So that ends the presentation in terms of looking at the visuals. The application is for a detached double garage. It is on an estate with not an established building line. It wouldn't be visible from the street scene and from the private areas. Officer's opinion is it would not affect the character of the area, particularly taking into account what was originally there before the work started. And would also point out that that 2 meter high wall could go back under permitted development rights because you're allowed to go up to 2 meters high with a wall or other form of enclosure under PD rights. So back to you, Chair. Thank you very much.
Richard Santer, thank you very much indeed for that. And we have 2 speakers on this application. The first is Councillor David Thompson, who is the objector. And then we have Mr. Tom Smith, who is the applicant, I beg your pardon. I was going to say applicant's agent, this is the applicant. So if we could have Councillor David Thompson first, please. You have 5 minutes to speak. I think you're fairly conversant with the protocol, Mr. Councillor Thompson. So you have 5 minutes, and with 30 seconds still to go, if you're still speaking, you will be reminded of that fact. Your time will start as soon as you commence speaking. Thank you.
Chair, thank you. Members, thank you. I'm David Thompson, a parish councillor representing Shenstone Parish Council, and also the 13 objectors who submitted their objections from a neighbour perspective. I'm also aware that the most recent neighbourhood objection has been circulated today without any change in planning officer recommendations. But I'm also aware that the planning officer alluded to that the dimensions on the planning application must be the dimensions adhered to in actual reality. The neighbour who can't be here tonight contests that, but the planning officer was quite right in today's further supplementary that the dimensions of the application must be the dimensions that are adhered to. Our request to committee is that the double garage planning application is either rejected or referred back to members by members to officers for further consideration of the points that I will identify to committee. The application is situated on the Millbrook Estate development, which is over 30 years old and comprises 120 detached homes, with a distinctive open plan environment. The open nature of the layout brings distinctive amenity benefits to this part of Shenstone. The parish council and residents have researched and concluded that no freestanding double garage approval has been given in the past 30 years since construction of the original estate. Whereas garage and living room additions attached to the Millbrook main properties have been approved without objection. There is currently an open view across the garden land upon which the proposed development will take place to a section of woodland within the adjacent Shenstone Village Lammas land. This is not scrubland as described by the planning officer in his third paragraph, but deciduous woodland with species ranging and greenbelt farmland beyond. The area was given local green space status in the neighbourhood plan because of its biodiverse value. The parish council believe this proposal, by virtue of its location, will result in a loss of open space, constituting a visual intrusion not in keeping with the open aspect of the estate. The proposal, therefore, is detrimental to the immediate surroundings. The planning officer states that the erosion of openness is marginal. We heard a different interpretation a few minutes ago, but the written report is the erosion of openness is marginal. We believe it to be enough to satisfy a rejection threshold. If we look at the photograph, and I don't know whether it was shown, it was given by the neighbourhood objectors, the photograph of the current position of the open space, and track the white roof line across the same height. That is the height of the 2-metre former garden wall, which was alluded to. But that garden wall, Chair, is further back and much lower than the 3.9 apex of the garage that we're seeing now. There will be a greater feeling of enclosure, actual height enclosure, by this proposal than the former garden wall, which is further back than the front of this garage proposal. The planning officer states the erosion of openness is marginal, but we believe it's enough to reject. Accordingly, the parish council is making 2 objections. Firstly, we submit that it conflicts with policy H2 of the neighbourhood plan regarding infill development. Paragraph 6 and 10 of the neighbourhood plan has definition of infill as development of a small gap in an otherwise built up frontage. It's quite clear in the neighbourhood plan, different from backland. The neighbourhood plan small print is quite clear about that. This proposal should be considered under this section of the definition as it protects in the neighbourhood plan overdevelopment, the appearance of cramming, and assures that the building does not adversely affect residential amenity of existing properties. That's what infill does. It's a blue box priority. The second objection is there's a strong Millbrook comparator which has not been covered by the planning officer. That was 5 Oakwood Close, which was refused on appeal, and the planning inspector found that the combination in Millbrook of built development and open spaces contributes positively to the area, and a small development that was in 5 Millbrook, 5 Oakwood would reduce open space. I request that members are given a chance to look at that strong comparator as it is comparable. And we request members to defer back to officers.
Thank you very much. Time up. Thank you very much indeed. Yes, thank you, Councillor David Thompson, for that. We now move on to the applicant, Mr. Tom Smith, please. Mr. Smith, you have 5 minutes, and with 30 seconds still to go, you will be notified of that fact. Your time will start as soon as you commence speaking. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair and members, for listening. I do apologise, I won't keep too much of your time. Just going back to Richard's first opening statements, I just wanted to address everybody, just so everybody knows what was actually behind the 10-foot wall was the more or less rundown polybicarbonate lean-to. Now, the one thing that we did discover when we did buy the property, that there was subsidence on the ground level. So basically the existing lean-to that was there previously, it just was not fit for purpose whatsoever. So it was obvious that something needs to be addressed, with it. I mean, the whole purpose of building a single-storey double garage is to facilitate off-road parking and storage. As you can see, the actual shared access between ourselves and next door, there's a shared access for us to go onto the property. Now, in terms of how that works is that we have to obviously slightly go onto their drive to come onto ours. So in order for this double garage to be applied, it's going to facilitate, as I did say, for off-road parking and for storage. Obviously, if that's not gone that way, then there'll obviously be unnecessary parking, obviously, upon the road itself. In terms of the actual property itself, all we try to do is follow all the procedures the correct way, and do everything and go down the legal route properly. In terms of the neighbours themselves, we was courteous of the neighbours when we arrived there, and we told them exactly what we were doing. That was all for exactly what we were doing at the start. But when they came to the conclusion that we were going to be putting our double garage next door to their double garage, for some reason they didn't like as to what we were doing with it. But me, my wife, I'm going to be totally honest with you. We are very surprised that it's had to come to the actual committee meeting for this, because it's simply a straightforward double garage, which is not going to impede any access light, or it's not going to impede the estate whatsoever. It's basically a 4-bedroom detached, which is just basically going to facilitate for off-road parking and storage. And it's going to be aesthetically pleasing as to previously what was there before. I mean, what was there before wasn't safe and was not fit for purpose whatsoever. And ultimately, the actual property that we have bought, we are just trying to renovate it to a very high standard for me, my wife, and my 1-year-old son to live there and to enjoy for many years to come. As you can see by Richard Sunter's recommendation from the Lichfield District Council, they have done their due diligence with this, and I have come to the conclusion that there isn't any other issue, or there isn't any other problems that it's going to cause by it being in the actual position that it's actually proposed to do. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening, and I'll let you make your judgment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. So there we are. Then we had Councillor David Thompson, who's objecting on behalf of the objectors, and also the applicant, Mr. Tom Smith. Members, do I have questions, comments from any of you, please? Yes, Councillor Birch, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm struggling to see any impact really on the residential amenity, given the layout of the houses in the close from a Google Street View perspective. I've been looking at that. I'm also unable to see how there's any real detriment to the views from neighbours, because of the way the houses are positioned. Nobody really overlooks it directly, and it doesn't seem to impact on anybody's light or anything. I also can't see how this being the first application for a double garage is of any relevance. Applications are heard on their own merits, and someone has to be the first to apply. Just even if that is approved, it doesn't really set a precedent that will mean everybody's then got the right to have a double garage. So I'm really struggling to see any reasons for refusal, and for that reason I would propose that we approve. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Birch. Okay, do we have any other comments, please? Obviously, it has aroused a certain amount of opprobrium locally. There's been 13 letters of objection. The Shenstone Parish Council have objected, of course. Just one question for, oh, right, yes, Councillor Ray, please. Councillor Ray.
I agree with Councillor Birch's summary, and I'd be happy to second his proposal.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Councillor Ray. Okay. I was just going to ask the question, the impact on the view of the Lammas land, Richard, please. Your views on that, obviously you consider that not to be particularly stark.
No, Chair, and again, I would point you to the design here. It actually presents a gable to the street scene. So it's not like the diagram that was put forward by the objector, which actually shows a roof slope, so you get the full massing of the roof slope on. Rather, you've actually got a gable, so it does put out some of the impact on either side. And secondly, if you look just roughly where that red dot is, that's going to be the 2 metre mark. So yes, it is significantly higher, but it diminishes as you go towards the apex. And you know, is that significant when, particularly when before this development commenced, there was a 2 metre high wall that linked the garage to the neighbouring property? Even without that wall, quite frankly, I would say that no, this does not, you know, affect the character of the area sufficient to warrant refusal. But with the fact that there was a wall there originally, and that a wall could actually be rebuilt in that on that line, then I find it very, very difficult to support the conclusion that it would be of a detriment to the view of the Lammas land.
Thank you, Richard. Just before we go to the vote as well, could I just ask, obviously the objector did cite the example of H2 of the neighbourhood plan and infill and how it contravened that. Would you just give us a comment on that, please?
Yeah, generally infill though is meant for housing, not for curtilage structures, and that's what the intent of the policy is. I mean, generally infill, if you looked at it, a dictionary definition would be the infilling of a limited space between otherwise built frontage. But generally the policy is for residential, not for curtilage.
Thank you very much, Richard Sunter. Members, the proposal comes from Councillor Birch. It's seconded by Councillor Ray, and that is to uphold the officer's recommendation to approve. Could I please have a show of hands, please, for those of you who wish to approve this application? Thank you. That appears to be unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you. So that application, ladies and gentlemen, has been approved. That's 22/01533/FUH. That has been approved. Thank you very much. We now move on to the final application of the evening. And for that, we have a change of planning officer. We now see Kerry Challoner resume her position on my right, and so it's your turn to take over the mantle of the planning officer now. Kerry, you're going to take us through 22/01560/FUL, Little Meadows, St Chad's Road at Lichfield. So members, if you'd like to just cast your eyes towards the screen, please, and Kerry Challoner will take us through this report. This is the final report, the final application, I should say, on the report this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the final report, the final application that we're looking at tonight is a replacement dwelling in Lichfield. So the application site sits off St Chad's Road, is accessed off St Chad's Road. And to the front of the site, we have Golden Meadows, which is a large detached traditional property. And then to the rear, we have the application property, which I'll show you some photographs of in a few slides. And then to the rear, we have Merry Meadows, which again is a more modern property. So residential area, all within the conservation area. Again, this overhead just shows the residential nature of the area. I think there's a school to the rear there. So looking at the photographs, we've got Merry Meadow, sorry, bear with, I keep getting the names mixed up. Golden Meadows at the front. There we go. And that's the access into St Chad's Close there. Then to the rear, you've got Merry Meadows, and its associated garage. So this is the application site in the foreground. The property did have a garage attached to it, which has been recently demolished. This is the application property, which would be demolished to make way for the new dwelling. So it's quite a simple design property, single, well, 1.5 story or single story with a room in the roof, as we would describe it. These slides just show the garden area. The application was called in on by Councillor Ball, referring to the scale of the property being too large, the replacement being too large, and also how it reduced the green space and biodiversity. So just in terms of that, this is the site in question. Just turn into the proposal. So the access would remain the same. The site is rejigged, so there's not a garage in this location anymore, although that has been demolished admittedly. And the footprint is an L shape there, and then the garden, you've got a garden area here, which exceeds our requirements set out in the SPD. This slide just shows the existing property, existing bungalow, and then I think that's quite. Yeah, that's a good section through the site to give you a bit more context there along the bottom. This slide shows the proposed development. So you've got the property would be a 2-bed dwelling. It has got rooms in the roof, so it's got an ensuite and the bedroom there in the roof. The windows are Velux roof lights there, and we've also got cross sections to show the relationship with the boundary. What in terms of this is quite a good cross section here, which shows the increase in height of the roof. So the dashed line is the height of the existing roof, and it's 0.8 meters. The proposed property would be 0.8 meters higher. Obviously, the existing property isn't energy efficient. There's benefits in terms of replacement in that respect. I'll just go back to the photograph to show you the tree in question, which was referred to on the supplementary paper. So this tree located on the boundary, it would not be worth, although it's in the conservation area, it would not be worthy of a tree preservation order due to its visual appearance, the fact that it's a multi-stem tree, etc. However, we have added a condition for an additional tree to be planted. It would obviously have to be cylindrical in shape, because I'll just find my notes again. Fastigated, that's the word I'm looking for. Fastigated tree, which would basically mean it's we don't want a great big oak in that garden. It's not big enough to accommodate that. However, there is an opportunity here to get a decent sized tree in that garden. So that forms the basis of the supplementary. The officer recommendation remains as set out in the main report to approve subject to the conditions.
Thank you very much there to Kerry Challoner. We have one speaker, someone very familiar to all of you here, Councillor Ball, who is the non-committee member. Councillor Ball, you will know that you have 10 minutes. Whether you wish to use the full 10 minutes is entirely up to you, at your discretion. But if you are still speaking after 9.5 minutes, you will be reminded that you only have 30 seconds to go. We'll all know. Thank you very much indeed. So, Councillor Ball, as soon as you start speaking, your time will commence. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I want to say 3 things tonight. One, I want to explain why I called it in the first place and why it's presented to you. Secondly, what the objects, the main objections are to it. And thirdly, not strictly a planning issue, but something to do with the neighbours and maintaining good faith with them. So, first of all, why did I call it in? I called it in because there is at least one objection to this. And I felt it's important as a local representative that transparency was obvious, rather than simply be taken behind closed doors by a planning officer. That I think it was important that it's considered by the committee and given due weight and consideration, so that people can see that the decisions have been taken in a full, open and transparent way. Coming to the objections themselves, This is a revised application. The original application was much larger. I accept it's been reduced in scale, but again, the plan that we looked at earlier shows that the mass on the site is considerably bigger than the existing dwelling. Presumably the area in front of the garage will be tarmacked or concrete. And what that would mean is that you've got a loss of green space in that area and subsequent loss in biodiversity. Not, I think, ameliorated enough by the brick-built back box or indeed by the supplementary proposal today of a tree. And I noticed around there earlier today when I was walking around there that a tree has already been uprooted and removed, a substantial tree. I don't know whether that was supposed to happen already before planning permission was granted, but a tree has been removed and is lying on its side at that point beside the house. Is that the city council is objecting on similar grounds to the ones I've raised, that the fact that it's a large development and the impact on biodiversity. The final thing I want to say is about the impact on neighbours. There's clearly a lot of dispute and aggression, indeed, between the new owners of Little Meadows and the owners at the front of the Golden Meadows, and they share a party wall. And a note on page 43, item 4, there's something about a scheme of construction management. I think if it could be inserted there or somewhere else in the in approval, if you deem it to be approved, something about consideration for the neighbours and the way that that party wall is dealt with, I think that would help ease the frictions between those two parties, because they're clearly quite heated at the moment, as I understand it. So I'm raising these objections so that this can be considered fairly and openly by the committee. And I hope you'll consider these as valid reasons not to go ahead, or at least to go back and ask for some further changes. Thank you.
Councillor Ball, thank you very much indeed for that. So, members, you've heard the report which has been given to you by Kerry Challoner, and also Councillor Ball has been raising points which have been made by one or two objectors in the area. Do we have any comments, questions, observations, please, members, on this? As Councillor Ball did state, and as is clearly mentioned in the report, this is a smaller iteration. The original one was quite a lot bigger. This is quite a lot smaller. And you can see from the, well, you probably haven't got the diagram, but I took this diagram off the planning portal, but it was shown on there that the roof height of the proposed application building is 0.8 meters. I think it's 0.88 meters, isn't it, Kerry? It goes from 5 meters to 5.88. So I suppose, to be fair, that's almost 0.9 of a meter increase as opposed to 0.8. So whether that will have a bearing on the neighbours is for you to decide. Do we have any points that people would like to make? Councillor Baker, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just looking in the report on the conditions, obviously for a construction management scheme, which I think Councillor Ball referred to, and whether on that, I don't know how, when you look at that you will make sure that it isn't just in the interest of highway safety, but in the interest of neighbours as well. I think that could be, if that is legally allowed, I think that could be a very useful opportunity to allow a smooth build at this, should it be approved. And I would just like to say I was very pleased to see the supplementary planning with conditions with regard to trees. As you know, trees, etc., and ecology are my passion. So I was pleased as a member of the planning committee, and obviously also on a personal level too. So thank you for that. And I'm glad that that was also raised in the objection, so that we did spot it and put it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Yes, I saw the reference to fastigiate trees. From years ago, I seem to remember that the opposite of fastigiate is pedunculate, but somebody may well correct me on that one. point that was made by Councillor Ball about the party wall. I've got a feeling that the party wall really is a civil issue. It can't really be incorporated into the planning process. I say unfortunately, because I think in some ways it is unfortunately, but that is the case. I'm just going to probably ask for Kerry Challenge to come in on that one, please, just to give us some clarity on that point.
Yes, Chair, that's correct. It is a civil matter. However, we have highlighted it on informative 6, so that would go out on the decision notice to say, although you're advised that the grant of any planning permission does not override private legal matters such as rights of access and for the construction for the purposes of construction and maintenance. So we have, although it's outside of our remit, we have highlighted it to the applicant. We do propose to highlight it to the applicant.
Thank you very much. And that probably as a planning department is as far as we can go on that one. Councillor Evans, please.
Chairman, in view of what we've heard, can we ensure that there will be the permitted development right attached as a condition that is not?
Yes,
I can't see whether or not that's there or not.
Page 44, Councillor Evans, notwithstanding the provisions of Schedule 2, Part 1, Classes A to G, I think you'll find that that is the removal of PDR at the bottom of page 44. Okay, thank you very much. But no, it's a good point and well made, of course. Right, okay. Councillor Powell and then Councillor Ray, please. Councillor Powell,
yes,
please.
thank you, Chairman. Just to say, I support Councillor Debs Baker and what she said. I think she's absolutely right. Also, the other business about the permitted development rights, etc. And I would move acceptance of it with those conditions.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Powell. Okay, Councillor Ray, I think you were next.
Yeah, it was just a point of information. A bit confused about this party wall. So where is the party wall? Can't see adjoining structures for the neighbouring property. Could you just explain where the party wall issue arises?
So the party wall will basically be anything on the boundary, and the bottom line of the Party Wall Act. I'm not a party wall surveyor or anything, but the bottom line is if you cause damage to somebody else's property, then you need to put it right. And it's no.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ray. I think I saw someone else asking to speak as well, or did I not? Councillor Baker.
Yeah, I'm happy to second Councillor Powell's proposal, and within that, I think he did make mention that I asked that when we do the construction management plan, that it does take into account neighbour considerations, not just highways.
Thank you very much, Councillor Baker. Thank you. So, members, I think you've all had your say. There's no one I've missed, is there? Okay. So the officer's recommendation is for approval. And in line with that, Councillor Powell has proposed as such approval, and that has been seconded by my vice chairman or vice chair, to be politically correct, I suppose. My vice chair, Councillor Baker. Members, could I have a show of hands, please, for those in favour of approval of this application? Yeah, I was just asked by Mrs. Billings there whether we're changing the conditions, but I don't think we are we? Conditions stay exactly the same. But that's all. I think that's already taken. Yes, thank you. That's taken as read. Thank you very much, Councillor Baker. I'm awfully sorry because I was I was distracted slightly. No, I don't wish to have an apology, but I was just distracted, so I wasn't able to see who'd put their hands up. Is that NEMCON? I think it is. Thank you very much indeed, members. In that case, then, I can tell you that the final application of the evening, which is 22/1560/FUL, the demolition of the existing dormer bungalow and erection of a replacement dwelling at Little Meadows, has been approved. Members, before you go anywhere, we're going to close the meeting, but I do need to retain your presence. I also need to remove members of press and public. So if those who shouldn't be here disappear, please, and then we can just resume. But that, ladies and gentlemen, brings to an end the open meeting here at the council chamber at Lichfield for this planning committee. And I look forward to seeing you all in 4 weeks' time. Thank you to those who joined us on the virtual platform, and I bid you good night. Thank you.